guys, and welcome back to another album review. So I know I am very behind on this one since this came out like over a month or so ago at this point. I kind of had a lot of shit going on in my personal life, as a lot of you guys know, when this came out. So I'm only just now finally getting around to listening to it, much less reviewing it. So this is equal parts first impressions as it is actual review for this thing, going through it track by track and giving my opinions of it. So this hopefully won't end up being a train wreck of a review, but I guess we're gonna find out one way or the other, aren't we? So, admittedly, Paul McCartney's One Hand Clapping, I knew about as a documentary long before I ever knew about it having a bootleg album. And I guess it was like the most famous Paul McCartney bootleg album, and yet I never encountered it. This will be my first foray into it. I never had it. And even the documentary, I didn't know that's what it was for years. Back in, like, what was it, 96, 97, when VH1 did McCartney Week, and were showing Paul McCartney stuff 24/7 for a week, leading up to the release of Flaming Pie, they did show it once in the middle of the night, and I still have the VHS tape it's on, but I didn't have it from quite the beginning, so I didn't know what the title was all these years, until this came out, and I was finally able to ID what that documentary was, and I've been trying to track it down ever since. Now that I have a name, it makes it easier. Side note, it is getting a theatrical run this September. I hope that means we'll also get a Blu-ray and/or DVD release. I will happily buy it, especially since if this is anything like the Bruce McMouse thing when it had its theatrical run, it never came close enough to me to be able to see it. So hopefully this is better. But if not, I pray for a physical release. So, anyway, we're not here to talk about the documentary, we're here to talk about the album. So, admittedly, at this point, Spotify has the regular version of the CD album that was up, as well as the backyard tapes are now added as well. So, all those people that thought they had to buy the different formats to get all the tracks, joke's on them, isn't it? I think there's still like one or two tracks that weren't added, but everything else at this point, it's all there. So, that's close enough for me, and I am going to go ahead and review it as is. So I'm gonna jump in, listen to the first track, and get right into this. So first track on the album is the title track, One Hand Clapping, and this is apparently an instrumental track, which is honestly such a sign of the times that it came from, especially with the keyboard in particular that Linda was playing on it. Sounds very much like the one that was used on Band on the Run in the middle bit. If you're a fan, you know exactly the sound I'm talking about. It's what was used here. But it's a very interesting track. It kind of just sounds like they were jamming and recorded whatever happened as what happened. There's like a little bit of studio chatter at the end, which is always nice, just to have a little bit more of that. Feel like, Linda's still around and stuff. I like it. I personally approve of the title track, so I don't quite see why people are bitching so much about this album, even just right there. But anyway, so one thing I will complain about, though, on a side tangent, I am not a fan of this album cover. I'm sorry, I'm not. The weird line art naked baby with one hand and one wing with the headphones on, it just... Why? Of all the things you could have used, that was what we went with, huh? Squicky vibes for me. But the track itself, pretty cool. Alright, so second track in is Jet, and oh my god, the whole energy of this recording makes up for any shortcomings that it has in the kind of tinny sound. It's a little bit hollow sounding just because this wasn't polished to album ready. This was a bootleg that they just decided to make public finally, so it was never meant to be as polished as the actual album version that was on Band on the Run. But for being what it was, just a jam session getting ready to go back out on the road and everything, and this is just them rehearsing and recording it, this is incredible. I mean, I was sitting here with my jaw on the floor like, this is the first time in many years I have been wowed by this particular song. I have to be honest, because the album version is so overplayed at this point, you know exactly what I mean. So hearing it done in a different way that actually has that energy behind it that I think the song is so deserving of, that was really, really cool to hear. So third track in, I feel like it may have peaked early for me because they threw in Soily. And because of the documentary of this, Little 12-year-old me always lived in hope that there was a McCartney album somewhere that had a studio version of Soily rather than just the one that was in the Rock Show movie and on Wings Over America. So this seemed like there was an album version somewhere. Yet try as I might to actually find it on an album, never on an album. So it was always a mystery to me for many years until finding out, oh, this is basically the only studio recording that ever existed of it. So, okay, but I mean, I'm glad to have it now. Basically, I feel like one of my holy grail quests of McCartney fandom just got solved by it being here. So, and it was right under my nose the whole time if I had realized there was an album that went with that documentary, but oh my god, it's such a kick-ass version of it. I mean, obviously nothing's going to top the one that's in Rock Show. But as far as a studio album of it goes, it's pretty damn kick-ass, I have to admit. So next track in is weird that we would go from such a high point as Soily to Sea Moon. Like, I'm sorry, what? Who made that judgment call of this and then that? I don't understand at all for the life of me. Granted, some of this is bias on my part because I know, unpopular opinion, I always thought Sea Moon was like literally the stupidest freaking song he ever wrote in his entire career. I have never liked it even as a small child. I thought it was stupid as hell. Sorry if you love that song, I'm allowed to have an opinion too. I love giving my regards to Broad Street and y'all hate that, so, you know, fair is fair. So anyway, but like, so, it's not just Sea Moon, but they slowed it down. It already was kind of a chill song, so to slow it down further, I'm like, why? Why are we doing that? But then, like, the last 30 seconds of the song clicks into Little Woman Love, which, had the whole track just been that song, I would have been perfectly happy. That's a great song, but most of it was wasted on Sea Moon. I have no words. So that's followed up by Maybe I'm Amazed, but I can't believe these words are leaving my lips as we speak. I was genuinely disappointed with this version of the song. This is such a wimpy version of the song, and objectively, this is my gun to head if you had to pick just one solo McCartney song as your all-time favorite forever. This is mine. So, hearing him kind of fuck it up, I'm like, no, what did you do to it? No. It's not like I'm just a loyalist to the album version. There have been plenty of live versions that I lost my shit for. Just, this one is genuinely gutless. Like I said, I'm sitting here, jaw on the floor for the opposite reason of the other track that I said about, because I was just so shell-shocked that I'm not into this particular version. I'm like, this seems sacrilege. Now, before anybody goes, oh, you're such a basic bitch, you probably only know the greatest hits. Yeah, I know his entire damn discography, so shut the hell up. I would have to choose a favorite from every single album of his to be fair, and even that would be difficult for me. But if I had to pick one and only one, that's my cop-out answer, so deal with it. But this one, I am not feeling it on this one, and that bothers me, just given what this song means to me. I don't quite know what to make of this one, but this ain't it. Okay, so then it redeems itself a bit with My Love, because, alright, even though it's stripped back a bit from the album version, which I think had already happened by this point, this one, it kind of works in that fashion, unlike the one for Maybe I'm Amazed, where it almost sounded like it was being played on a baby keyboard at first. No, this one actually works out, even though it's not quite polished, it's a little rough around the edges, but there's a vulnerability there that I don't pick up on in the album version that is evident here, that I feel is more true to the whole vibe of the song. So this one, here's my vote, this is good. I like this one. This is helping redeem it a bit. Okay, so the next track in is Bluebird, and oh my god, for any and everything that I've complained about so far on this album, all is forgiven. for this track being what it is. Oh my god, just it being Bluebird alone is enough for me to forgive a lot of sins, but oh, this is such a gorgeous version of it, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a bit longer than the album version, so I get more of it. So, you know, it's win-win all around. And just, oh my gosh, this whole song is such a vibe, and just, This is like, oh god, I know I have no filter, and plenty of people are gonna click out right here, but I'm over here listening to this, I'm like, I would get fucked to this track. I'm like, this is good right here. I am, ooh, like instant goosebumps up the arms with this one, like, oh, okay, alright, I have hope for this album yet. I have hope for it yet. So the next track in is, I think it might be a cover song, but this one is Let's Love, and I could swear I've heard this one before, somewhere. I cannot pinpoint it for the life of me of where else I've seen this pop up. I tried to Google it, and it claimed, like, on Venus and Mars, but I'm like, no version of Venus and Mars I've ever owned had that on it, so I don't know. Was it in the documentary? Maybe that's... I'm hearkening back to, like, way back in the way back and remembering, I don't know, because that's all I can think of, because I don't know where else I would have heard him do this, but it was not just like hearing someone else do the song. I specifically remember hearing Paul do it, like this exact recording, so I don't know. But it's another one where it's just one of those beautiful melancholic songs that Paul does so well, with like the minor chords and everything, just chef's kiss, just wish it were longer, but other than that, no complaints. I really like that one. So the next track in is All of You, which again, I feel like it's another cover possibly. And another one that I have like the weirdest vague memory of hearing this somewhere before, but again, I couldn't tell you where. But oh god, the chord progression in this one just is so delicious throughout it. Just, I really wish Paul had done more jazzy stuff like this in his career. I mean, can you imagine if he had done the Kisses on the Bottom album when he was like 30 or 40? Oh god, it would have been such a different experience, and this is a glimpse into like what could have been had he done it. So I am grateful for these recordings existing, because it's a little taster of what we could have had, you know? So next track in is I'll Give You a Ring, which it's definitely like a demo version of it, but it's surprisingly, even though it's just Paul and a piano and nothing else, it's surprisingly intact, despite the fact that I don't think the actual studio version had existed yet at this point. I think this one was still in its infancy, working towards happening, because this was, I think, was it the A-side or was it the B-side? Well, it was one side of the single that was with She's My Baby, and I think that came out around the time of, Wings at the Speed of Sound, so I think this is pre-that. So, he definitely had all the lyrics down, he had the piano part down. It felt like, vocally, he's holding back a little bit on this one from what it ended up becoming. I feel like there was a little bit more added to it when it finally did make it to that official version that we all know and love, or at least I love. But still good, though. Still interesting listening to it as, you know, he's kind of fleshing it out, adding to it, seeing how he feels about it, see if it feels right yet, so it's kind of cool. So next track in, we're back to Band on the Run with Band on the Run. So this is kind of an interesting version of it, though, because it almost feels like almost a garage band doing it, practically. Like, we have that dirty, fuzzy guitar, and, like, you can tell that, like, they're trying to punch it up from the album version, but at the same time making it accessible in a way that they could take this on the road, and trying to figure out how they're gonna marry the two in a way that doesn't suck. And this is pretty intriguing. Like, I have seen some of the early Wings footage on the road, and this is right in there with that, so I can tell this is exactly what that is, and it's really cool to listen to. So then we've got this really kick-ass version of Live and Let Die, and if I am not mistaken, I think the official track was already out at this point, as well as the movie. So I'm not sure what they are using for the orchestral backing track with this, because it's not identical to the one that's actually in the studio recording. This is different, so I don't know if this is an alternate take that wasn't used that he was using as the backup here. I don't know what this is, but oh, it's awesome, and the ending is different. And again, this feels sacrilege, but I would argue, I think, in terms of theatricality, the ending of this version feels more theatrical to me and like it would fit in a movie soundtrack better than the one that actually ended up being the thing. So this is just mind-blowing to listen to the little nuances and differences throughout. It just, oh, I love it. And even Paul, at the end of the track, I think he feels exactly the same way. So the next track in is 1985, which is, for multiple reasons, my favorite track off of Band on the Run. So seeing that it is included in this track listing made me very, very happy. But this is kind of an interesting rendition of it, because it starts out with just Paul and a piano and nothing else. That's it. And it makes it seem like the whole thing is going to be just that. And then out of nowhere, all like the studio backing stuff that I think is the stuff that ended up on the album is suddenly there. But it's still with this version of it that he's playing here. So I'm like, interesting. Interesting. And it is different. It has considerably less of the grunty, moany stuff that's in the album version of it that are responsible for why, I mean, I know, TMI, no one gives a shit, but like, why I view that song as pure sex. But I mean, this one, not so much, but my brain is so hardwired into what I know the song as, that just knowing that it's on here, it's like, well, even this version, even though it's not that, still kind of got me horned up, not gonna lie. And then, like, even the goofy version of it at the end, I'm like, still kind of doing it for me, not gonna lie. So, but, no, I will not elaborate. I will not. But, well, maybe, but, no, probably not. But regardless, interesting version, though, but a little mismatched, I feel like, if I'm being completely honest. So the next track in is Paul covering Babyface. Yes, that Babyface. This I think I had heard as a bootleg at some point in time, but in really poor quality, so it's nice hearing it all cleaned up and crisp and clear on this. I feel like I may have had an abridged version prior to this, so hearing the full thing is a trip. I know this is what some people nickname Paul's granny music. I love his granny music, shut the fuck up. So, but it's kind of cool, especially knowing like the nod to his dad and the jazz band that he had and everything. This feels like an homage to his dad, in my opinion. I could be wrong on that, but I thought it was very sweet. So next track in surprised me. So the next one was Let Me Roll It. Now, I have a long, complicated history with this song to where up until now, I have never encountered a version of this song that didn't make me just sit there the whole time going, how much longer? It's not almost over yet. Like, I am so bored of this song usually, and even like, it's not that it's overplayed, it's just, I personally find it boring as hell. I don't know why. It seems like I'm the only one who feels this way. Most people love this song. I do not share the sentiment. Except for this version, because it's not the usual guitar riff. He adds to it. It's not a big change, but it's an effective change that actually makes it interesting to my ears. Because it just felt like such a slog to sit through in like every other version of it I have ever heard, and I wish this right here were the version that he used anywhere, everywhere else. But unfortunately this is a one-off. But I like that he added to it. I think that it made it better. He also made it a bit more up-tempo. It's a little faster, not extremely so, but enough to where it's like, this is different. And in a way that I like this a lot, actually. This, I feel like, oh, is this going to transform the regular song for me too, or just this one? I'm not sure. too early to say yet, but at least as far as this one goes, yeah, I actually really dig this one. And that is saying a lot for me as somebody who just traditionally never really cared for that one. Don't have a real good reason why other than found it boring. But this one, it's more interesting because of those little bitty changes. They don't seem like much, but they make all the difference in the world to me, So next track in is Blue Moon of Kentucky, which, given the vibe of everything else so far, it's so mishmash, doesn't feel like it fits the vibe of everything else, but then again, somebody could make the same argument about Babyface, somebody could make the same argument about Let's Love, somebody could make the same argument about, what was it? What was the other one? All of You. Like, but this, I don't know, it feels more obnoxiously out of place where I'm like, it's not objectively a bad cover or anything. Nothing like that. Although the beginning of it's kind of rough and it's not the greatest, it's not the finest thing on here. But I mean, it's not horrible either, but it's one that I very probably see myself skipping past in future plays, but that's just me. So next track in, there's a really interesting version of Power Cut from Red Rose Speedway, which is one of my favorite McCartney albums ever. So glad to see it on here, especially because that medley at the end of the album is like my favorite thing. But regardless, he does this intro on this version of it that's basically supposed to be like a spoof on the Lawrence Welk show, and I love it. It's so chef's kiss spot on. But then, like, the song itself, the keyboard, the style that they use it in, it sounds like something you would hear at a baseball game. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? With, like, the keyboard and them playing random snippets of songs. That's what it sounds like here. I don't know if that's a setting. I don't know if it's just that type of keyboard. I don't know. But, it stays solid throughout the whole thing. But Paul's vocal on it is still great. But it's weird just hearing the one portion of the medley on its own as a standalone. It's so strange. But I don't dislike it in any kind of way. It's just different in a good way. So next one in is a song called Love My Baby, and it's again on that instrument, whatever it may be, that sounds like baby music. Like, I don't know, is that a xylophone that they're playing? A marimba? Like, what is that? It sounds like baby music. The irony that they used it on this and not on Power Cut is that I believe on the album version of Power Cut, there's a little bit in the middle of the song that uses that instrument, and they didn't use it here. Make it make sense? I don't freaking know. But this one, I don't know, it feels like Paul was just kind of noodling around, wanted an excuse to use this instrument for something else, and he found an excuse to, and then kind of scrapped the song, so. So next track in is like the most bizarrely fucked up version of Let It Be I've ever heard. This is absolutely Paul just dicking around because he can. Because he's playing it on an accordion of all things. It actually gives vibes of like the anthology version of Your Mother Should Know. Like the intro to that, it feels exactly like that. But this, I'm just... For the novelty factor, it's kind of fun to listen to once, just to say you have, but I don't see myself going back to this particular track on purpose, unless if just to show it to somebody, be like, hey, for shits and giggles, listen to this. Because, I mean, again, this sounds like me noodling around on an accordion badly, and I speak from experience because I own not one but two, because I inherited my grandpa's and my great-grandpa's. Yes, because of the Who song Squeeze Box. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, so... But yeah, this one I'm like, nah, even the Italian in me can't salvage this one. I can't with it. I cannot take it serious. If it had been done well, maybe, but this was absolutely him just having fun and dicking around with it. And to respect it for what it is, as that's fine, but it's something that I intentionally want to go back to. I see why this was kind of, like, abandoned for decades. I see why. So then brings us to a really cool version of Long and Winding Road, which again, is just Paul and a piano. It sounds like he's kind of dusting this one off for the first time in possibly since the Beatle years. But then it very abruptly, like practically as if you like had it playing on a violin, went across the record, like that kind of abruptly switches into Lady Madonna out of fucking nowhere with no warning, and it's not a smooth transition at all. It doesn't feel like it fits. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, I was really enjoying Long and Winding Road, though. But on the other hand, I'm also really enjoying Lady Madonna, so I can't even be that mad at it. But that transition could have been done a little more smoothly than it was. But apart from that, it's great. So then we've got this really rockin' version of Junior's Farm that, again, is another one that feels very garage band-esque and everything, and just very down-to-earth, very human, but not in a way that detracts from the song in any kind of a way. I would say it's just as strong as the studio version, actually, but it is different. And that makes it interesting to me because it's different from that album version that I've heard 20 million times in my life. So this is pretty cool, actually. I like that. And especially since it was like all like the quieter like piano stuff, and then all of a sudden, bam, we are back. We are back. It's like, okay, I'm here for it. So then we get an acoustic version of Sally G, which is kind of interesting, and honestly, I must say I prefer this version over the album version, since that one, the fiddles bother me. They bug me. So, I mean, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but on that particular song, no thank you. But this one, since it's just Paul and the guitar, I'm like, okay, this I can hang with. This is great. Like, I found myself singing along with it and everything. Like, this one, this is nice. This is a nice rendition of it. So in case anyone was in the same boat I was with the actual, like, album version of it, try this one. You might feel similarly about it. So then there's an interesting rendition of the song Tomorrow, but it's very slowed down and drawn out, which, I mean, given how much I love the original song, sounds good on paper, but I don't know how I feel about it being slowed down, though. I don't know. I even gave it a few listens to, like, really see if maybe it just needed a bit to grow on me, but no. I think on this one, I very much prefer the original. I mean, this is okay. It's just weird, because on paper, we've got not only the song itself being what it is, but it being, like, a kind of jazzy piano version of it that I should, again, on paper, be all into, but it was unnecessarily slowed. It didn't need to be a slow song. I guess he was just playing with it, experimenting, seeing if it could become something else, but on this I'm like, nah. So then the next track is Go Now, which is Denny's one contribution on here, really, and it's kind of bittersweet listening to it now. I think this is the first time I've listened to Denny Lane since his passing last year. Kind of nice to hear his voice again, actually. Another one that has that garage band feel, but something about the pacing of the drumming makes it feel almost like a waltz. I suppose, thinking back to, like, the regular song, I guess, timing-wise, like, time signature, maybe it always was, but, I mean, I never thought of it as that. But because of the drumming here, it's very noticeable, at least to me. I don't know if that was the intention, I don't know if it just works out that way, but it's the way I'm hearing it, so I'm like, oh, it transformed it a bit, at least in my brain, because I never thought of it as a waltz before, so I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool, though. So then the next track in is Wildlife, which, I mean, that's often an overlooked track altogether when it comes to Wings. I remember the documentary, they show a little snippet in there, and for years, that was the only place I had ever heard any of that song. Incidentally, Wildlife was like the last missing piece of my McCartney collection for the most part, so it took me a long time to actually get the studio version of that. But as far as I knew, I thought it was just something that had popped up in that and never resurfaced, even though in hindsight, it should have been really obvious what album it came from. But obviously this is not as polished as the album version, none of these are, but I don't know, something about it, I feel like I prefer this one. It's a little more raw, it gets a little more of the urgency of the message of the song across. So, with that in mind, weird as it is to say, I think I like this one better. Okay, so last song on the album proper, we're still gonna do the backyard sessions, so don't worry, there's still another 6 tracks after this, is High High High, which, I mean, again, another one of my absolute favorite Wings tracks, so I'm just like, ooh, alright, what's this gonna sound like? And it's a little bit slowed down, which, okay, not as into that, but I mean, it's still cool hearing it in this kind of a format, because again, yet another one, garage band kind of sound, just very down to earth, just a few of them just jamming out, having a great time, but also because it is slowed down, we can finally put to rest the whole body gun versus polygon debate once and for all. It's polygon. And it pains me to say it because I was so confident for so many years in the actual studio song that it was Body Gun. It makes more sense that way, but there's even twice. He even repeats the verse. He does it twice. There is no mistake here. It is definitely Polygon. So, I guess there's that. Like, it's still cool. It's still very enjoyable. This is one I will most definitely go back to in future. Okay, so now we're into the backyard tapes and everything that were filmed, well, not filmed, but recorded literally in the backyard of Abbey Road Studios. So, first one here is Blackpool, and admittedly, I'm not really a fan of this one. I'm just gonna be real. I don't know if it's the subject matter, I don't know what, but it doesn't do it for me. I can only assume, with the words being as they are, simple though they may be, I am guessing it's a football song. Maybe that's why I'm not into it. Not a sports person here, but, it just feels like it's him noodling on a guitar, didn't really have words, so just first thing that popped into his head, that's what came out, as was often the case with Paul, still is, I think, so, on to the next one. So now we've got, like, a really cool acoustic Blackbird, which, I mean, I guess Blackbird was always acoustic, but still, this one just, love this. Selfishly, I'm smug that it is in the perfect register for my voice on this version, but just everything about this one, I'm like, yes, this is what I'm looking for from this set. This right here. That is exactly what I was expecting the entire album to be like. It was more like this, I think. So, did not disappoint, I have to admit. So the next one up is Country Dreamer, and it's a bit of a rough one because of the false starts, because he doesn't remember the words initially. It's taken him a minute to get it, and I love that they didn't edit that out. I like that they left that there. That was very human of them. I love stuff like that. That actually made me think more of this track than I probably otherwise would have. Since even the original, it's pretty common I skip this one. I don't hate it, but it's just like not really in the mood for it a lot of the time kind of song. But that right there actually just made me, like, take pause enough to be like, alright, now, admittedly, I'm kind of half waiting to see if he suddenly forgets the words again, but he doesn't. He's got it. Once he's got it, he's got it. But, no, it's a fun enough song, and this one's nice in this format, too. It feels like it was kind of designed to be performed the way that it's done here. Minus the false starts, but still. So the next one I'm actually really excited was included here, and was the one I was looking the most forward to, and it is 20 Flight Rock by Eddie Cochran. And that is, aka, the song that got Paul into the Beatles, so, you know, respect where respect is due. But hearing him do it, and in such a way where it just, so down to earth, because even for, like, the guitar solo in the middle that should be there, he's kind of just, like, humming it, like so many of us do, when it's like, I don't actually know how to play this, so I'm gonna kind of fake it, or like, I can only play the rhythm part, I can't do both, I'm gonna fake it. It's like one of those moments, and just, I find it relatable, and I found that endearing, hearing him do that. Freaking Paul McCartney, of all people, doing that. But it is a good rendition all around. Otherwise, apart from that, too, just, I'm so happy that that was there. So the next one up is actually, to me, out of the entire documentary of One Hand Clapping, this is what I, for years, found to be the most memorable bit out of the whole thing. Like, my takeaway, even if I left everything else, the takeaway that stands out in my head is Paul doing Peggy Sue by Buddy Holly. And 12-year-old me did not know anything about Buddy Holly going into that. So that was like my first little breadcrumb intro to Buddy Holly, and this is so often the way with me where it's like, unless there's a trail of breadcrumbs from other things that I like, I often won't, like, venture outside of my comfort zone very far unless shoved. So, something like this gives just enough incentive to go check out that thing, because it's like, if you look at, like, all of my interests across the board, it's like looking at a 6 degrees of separation, and that is very much on purpose, because that is how I personally branch out and discover other things. It's because it links to something else, pretty much. It is very rare that there's something just, like, out on its own island, sole and separate from everything that has nothing to do with anything. That basically doesn't happen with me. It's very rare. So everything is connected to something, and this was one of those that was kind of like a catalyst, starting to, like, look at Buddy Holly stuff, because, I mean, Paul did Buddy Holly stuff, John did Buddy Holly stuff, I mean, the Beatles did some Buddy Holly stuff in the very, very, very early days, and again, that's really all it takes with me, is even just one of those would have been enough, so. But this is a very good version of it, very faithful, very faithfully done. I very much appreciate it, and I can't wait for that documentary to be publicly viewable again, so the rest of you guys could see what I'm talking about with that exact clip, to actually be able to see it as well as hear it. So the last track on here is also another Buddy Holly track, and this one is I'm Gonna Love You Too. Again, very faithfully done. You can very much feel how much he is a fan, to know where to put all the twangy spots and all the like kind of thing. You know, the Buddy Holly thing I'm talking about. I don't know what to call that, but he knows exactly where to place every last one of those perfectly. So it's like, I very much appreciate Paul in fanboy mode. It's so cute to listen to. Absolutely love this. So, running the numbers on how I scored everything, I think for me, I am giving this album a very solid 8 out of 10. Again, I don't get why people were shitting as hard on this as they did when this came out. Is it just because it wasn't new to them, therefore they just had to crap all over it for the rest of us who it is new to? I don't know. Is it because a lot of them are Lennon guys? Probably. But, like, let's be real. So, but I found this to be very enjoyable. I'm glad I finally had time to sit down and listen to it all. I'm glad that he finally released those extra tracks for the rest of us. Very enjoyable. If you haven't checked it out yet, do yourself a favor. Be sure to do that. And, you know, when the documentary hits theaters, be sure to hit that up too, because it is worth it. And fingers crossed that it gets a DVD and or Blu-ray release. So anyway, that is it for this one, guys. So as usual, you know what to do. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you're not already like to be, click subscribe. Hit that notification bell icon so you never miss an upload. Leave comments down below. Make sure you're following my social media accounts, my Facebook fan page, my Twitter, my Instagram, my eBay, my Reddits, everything and more. It's all down below. And if you like what I do here on this channel and you'd like to help support it, the donation link, as always, is down in the description. Get your name on the end card for a month from the time of donating. Anyway, guys, till next time, see ya.